listening to Bizdom Bites podcast.
Hello, hustlers, and welcome to Bizdom Bites, the podcast where we empower young entrepreneurs with actionable hacks for business and marketing. This is a special episode because today we are diving into the exciting world of startups and venture capital in our first ever guest episode with our inaugural guest speaker, Abubakr Sajith. Abubakr isn't just a startup financing guru, he's also the brains behind this popular YouTube show called The Dollar Diaries, where he dissects the ups and downs of fueling startups and navigates the twists and turns of fueling business ventures to victory.
So my name's Abubakr. I am the host of a podcast called The Dollar Diaries. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and most of it. That is The Dollar Diary, THE Dollar Diary. That is what I'm doing right now. Previously, I was working with a venture capital firm. We used to fund startups. I was working with one of the startups very closely. I recently left my job because I wanted to take a small career break to pursue other professional exercises. So I just took a break. So currently, it's Dubai, right? I live in Dubai, one of the busiest places in the world right now. It's a hotspot for most of the new emerging technologies, emerging companies, and everything. So it is a good time to be in Dubai. It is an interesting time to be looking at new opportunities in Dubai. And yeah, so that's mostly about me.
All right. So, Abubakr, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. I'm really excited to be here. It's a kind of unfortunate that we had to reschedule a couple of times, but I guess it's all right. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, it's okay. So, without any further ado, let's dive into the exciting world of startup. So, I know a lot of people out there who are brimming with bold ideas and are ready to launch their ventures. But before we hit the gas, let's talk about some basics. Okay, so Abubakr, what are some key factors young entrepreneurs should focus on in their early stages?
So, to be really honest, right? I can give you an answer from both an entrepreneur side and as a investment side, right? Like what we look for in entrepreneurs and what I've tried and what I failed at multiple times as well, right? So when I was in university, I've tried starting up a bunch of things, failed a couple of times. And what a lot of people don't tell you is that a lot of people around you won't be honest with you, right? They listen to your ideas and they listen to all of these, how you're going to execute your grand vision. And the first thing they'll say is like, this is such a good idea, right? This is beautiful. This is so imaginative. This is so creative. What people often don't like to hear is criticism, right? So I think like a very important factor, which I think would have played a significantly different role if I had that around me. People who criticized my idea, people who gave me constructive criticism, not criticism in the sense of like, you are terrible, you are this thing, you're not good enough. Not like that sort of criticism. Have you thought about this? Maybe this won't work in this market. Maybe you're thinking a little too much. Maybe your analysis of the market isn't accurate enough. So you want to find people who are able to give you constructive criticism, people who are ready to say that this is not the right thing to do, this is the right thing to do. Maybe you should look into this. That is probably step one. Step two is, for every business, you can get many sources of funding because funding's primary, right? No matter if you have the best idea in the world or even the worst idea in the world, you won't be able to know whether you have the best or the worst idea unless you have some money to experiment with. And for a lot of us, at least for me, I didn't have a lot of money to begin with, right? So you go on this exercise, creating pitch decks and going to investors and trying to raise money, which about 95 to 99% of the companies won't get a shot at, right? 95 to 99% of the companies won't get funded. And the reason is that as an investor, you don't want to give your money to somebody random, right? You want to give your money to somebody who's proven, who has some traction in the market and somebody who can come and say that, yes, I've done this much. This is how much you will get back in this many years. So from an investment point of view, it doesn't make sense for me, an investor, to randomly give money to every Tom, Dick and Harry. It makes more sense for me to give a little bit of money to a very stable, very proven entrepreneur. So that is why if you see the trends, right, you'll see second-time entrepreneurs, people who are starting their second business after their first successful exit, they tend to raise more money compared to first-time founders or even young founders, as a matter of fact. So when you're starting out, when it comes to funding, you probably want to try and save your own money, make your own money. If you're working, use your salary. If you're not working, try some freelance gigs, make up your own money. That is the best way, because when you lose your money, there's nobody you have to answer to, right? You took a risk at work. You also, there is this concept in finance called risk tolerance, right? You are less tolerant towards losing your own money. When it's somebody else's money, you don't really value it nearly as much. So you will take more decisive, more concise and more conservative decisions when it's your own money. But on the other hand, let's say you don't have enough money on your own. The next immediate people you want to ideally reach out to is your family. Like, your family can be your biggest supporters, but also sometimes can be your biggest downfall. If you have loving family like mine, which is I'm hoping most of you, if you have a really loving family, your loving family is not going to tell that your idea is terrible. Your loving family is never going to come to a state and say, like, this is not a good idea, you should not do it. Your family is always going to be supportive, and that can be a good and a bad thing. So when you're asking them for a little bit of money, that's a good thing. It's nice to know that somebody is behind you and supporting you. But when you ask them for a larger amount, you tend to have a very biased understanding of what the risk tolerance is for your family and for yourself. So I would say get initial funding from your family, but you want to go one step further as well. One step further is, I would say, is your friends. Like, these are people who support you, but they can call a spade, right? They can say, like, this is a bad idea to your face, and they don't mean it in a very harsh manner. So that is, I would say, your initial round of people, you, your family, and your friends. And if you can build something with the money that you can make out of yourself, your family, and friends, I think that is usually enough money to test things out. And if that tests prove that you are not in the right track, then that is a good enough time to, abandon the project. The biggest problem I would say a lot of founders have is not know when to abandon project. They're like, you know what, I spent 6 months on this. Maybe I should go another month. And you're burning more money and wasting your time. And to know when it's not worth it is very important. And when you have very limited amount and when you can build something, you will know when it is successful or not, because you have a limited runway. You don't have infinite runway when you're asking money from your family and friends. So these are probably like the two important things. Surround yourself with people who are ready to give you constructive criticism, and always manage your cash flow.
Okay, that's super valuable, especially for our audience here in India. So my next question is, we've got a lot of creative minds, but sometimes the resources can feel limited. What are some creative ways to launch a startup without breaking the bank?
Look, if I have to be honest, right? Depending on which country you are. So if I'm in Dubai, it's significantly harder compared to in US. If I'm in India, it's significantly harder to start something compared to being in the US or one of these developed nations. The thing is, resources are limited when you're in India. Resources are limited when you're in the UAE. Resources are not as limited when you're in the US, right? So there is nothing inherently wrong about being in India or the UAE, and there's nothing inherently amazing about being in US or Europe or UK or one of these countries, right? What you have to understand is that you have to understand what your idea is, right? What is the essence of the idea? What problem are you trying to solve? And you have to figure out what is the easiest and the cheapest and the cost-efficient manner in which I can solve this problem. So, and this is like the most universal application of it, right? No matter which country you are, no matter how much resources you have to figure out what is the cheapest way to solve this problem. A good example is like a basic delivery service, right? Like a grocery delivery service. So, for example, yes, you can build an amazing application. You can build an amazing AI engine for it to sort of categorize different things. You can build amazing technology. But at the core of it, if it's just a delivery application, do you really need that to solve the problem at the beginning, right? Can you solve this problem by hiring a few people to buy and give things? Right? Do you really need that insane amount of technology to get into the market? So you want to find the cheapest way to get into the market. So you have to look at your idea. There is a lot of ideas around, right? So you can also kind of break your ideas into two types of categories. One is something that is R&D oriented, and one is fixing immediate problems. Now, if you take a delivery application or a delivery service, it's a fixing an immediate problem kind of a business idea. You can immediately solve the problem at a much significantly cheaper cost. But if it's like an AI chatbot or like you're building something like ChatGPT from scratch, there is literally no way where you can do that without breaking your bank. Correct? So you have to take a very bold and decisive call and decide whether this is going to break your bank or not. And if it is going to break your bank and you don't have the bank to back it, you probably shouldn't pursue it. Right? There is literally no reason. A lot of people will be like, you can try this, try that. The honest truth is, like, if it's going to break your bank and if it's an R&D focused project, like ChatGPT or complex AI algorithms, extremely complex machine learning algorithms, like NLP projects, like these are things that require a lot of money and a lot of funding to be constantly developed to be at a good state. So if you have an idea that is that, you don't have the money to back it up, you don't have funding to back it up, that is unfortunately not a good idea, right? So initial step is that you want to project into whether it's an R&D project or is it a market fixing project, right? If it's a market fixing project, find the cheapest way to get to it. Like, even if you have to, like, again, the delivery service, right? Even if you don't have money, you just want to prove that you yourself go out, get the items and deliver it to your customers. The idea is not about making profit in the beginning. The idea is to validate whether a problem exists. If there are 15 delivery applications, you don't belong in the market unless you're bringing something to the table, right? So you want to first validate it. Validating is going to cost a little bit. It's either going to cost you money, or it's going to cost you time, or it's going to cost you both, right? So it's better to do it yourself, like directly deal with the customer, directly deal with the suppliers, and get it done that way, right? That is the only thing. But if you don't have money, don't even think about an R&D project.
Okay. As you said, you have a background in both finance and also in tech. So for a new business venture, what are the initial considerations you think are there around funding? Do we always need to raise funds before launching, or are there any alternative approaches? Let's say we do require some funding.
Is it? Okay. So first thing first is, one, not everybody needs funding. All right. That is step one, right? When you go out and ask people for money, you need to have a justification for why you need funding and how you're going to use it. All right. You think about it this way, right? You can think about it in a way that if I give it, let's say you're building something, right? Let's say you're building an application called X or Y, XY. All right.
Yeah.
If I give you 10 dirhams or if I give you 100 rupees, for example, all right, is it going to change it in any way? Right? Is the application going to change in any significant manner? Right? That is a question. Right? it's not always a no, it's always not always an yes. It's a very situation by situation basis. If 100 rupees is going to change that application significantly, then you go out and raise 100 rupees. Okay? If not change it significantly, how much money does it require to change it significantly? Sometimes it's 1,000 rupees, sometimes it's 10,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees. It doesn't, right? It doesn't end there. It's a case by case basis. So you have to first identify how much money do you really require for it to have a significant change. Okay? But for a significant change to happen, you have something called a pilot product or an MVP of sorts.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this MVP is a very tricky situation, right? If you are from a tech background, and I'm going to assume that this is a tech startup to begin with. If you're from a tech background, things are a little easier. You can develop the app yourself. If you don't know the programming languages, for you with tech background, it's going to be significantly easier to learn how to develop applications compared to somebody who's coming from a business or a marketing background. So that is one thing, right? You always want to have the skill in-house, right? Some skill in-house, maybe not the extensive of it, but some skill in-house. So if you're not a IT person or a tech person, you need to go find a co-founder who's a tech founder, right? And this is where the co-founders make a lot of difference. So if you're not a marketing person, get a person who is a marketing co-founder, right? So you want to find these key co-founders. A lot of times what happens is people go into business with people with similar skills. So a tech guy will go with business with somebody in tech. A marketing person would go to business with somebody in marketing. And that is often a catastrophic thing, because what happens is that there is no room for other skills.
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to avoid that. So the easiest way and the cheapest way to make sure something happens is get a good co-founder. Once you have a really good co-founder, what you do is you build the MVP. Now, this MVP, you have to build it again, coming back to the cheapest way possible to solve that problem. You don't have to have every single feature. You don't have to have every single functionality. It doesn't have to be polished. You just want to show that there is a market for this. That is the entire idea of an MVP. So when you come to the MVP stage is where you typically need the most amount of money, because that is where you want to do significant amount of cases to go into the market. For that, there are a couple of ways. Again, you go to your friends and family, which is the most easiest and the most least painless way, I would say, right? But sometimes, don't happen, right? Your friends and family may not have. The next stage you want to look at is for angel investors, right? And this, all the time you go into your VCs and everything, you want to look for angel investors, somebody who can take a bigger risk on you, right? And a lot of times, compared to what you're saying, like depending on which country you are and everything, you might not find an angel investor, okay, which is fine. If you don't find an angel investor, what you have to do is you have to look for some sort of a crowdfunding option. There are things like Kickstarters and Indiegogo, and depending on different countries, there are different initiatives from it as well. So you want to look for crowdfunding. But then much, much, much easier method is looking for incubators and accelerators, right? These incubators and accelerators are like programs typically by private entities or sometimes even government. So this is not a political take, but the Indian government has some incubators and accelerators within some regions of India. If you're part of a university, you're typically, if it's like IITs and IIMs, they typically have an accelerator. Or if you don't have an accelerator, if you're in university, you don't have an accelerator, look at how accelerators work and bring them to your university. That gives you enough experience on how to manage different things. So incubators and accelerators in India, there's plenty, honestly. So you can just search for incubators, accelerators in India, you'll get a full list. There are websites like F6S and all these things where you can search for these things. These are another foolproof way to get some funding. And more important than funding at an early startup is the support. People who can, again, I'm just going back to it, people who can give you constructive criticism. Because people who say, there are three types of people, I would say, right? One type of people, like they support you no matter what. That's bad influence, right? Especially when you're starting a company. There are some people who give you nothing but negative comments, right? Everywhere you look, they give you just negative comments. That is also very bad influence, because that is not what you want in the beginning. You want people who care about you, who care about the project, and who tell you to look at the right places. That's the type of people you want. And a lot of times people fail because they don't have that people around. So you want going to an incubator and accelerator is one way to find out people. If you're going the crowdfunding route, the advantage of crowdfunding is that it's a bunch of people giving you money. So not only you're getting money in the process, you're also kind of validating the market in the process. If people are giving you some money, like trusting a random stranger and giving money to, do their own, do their company, build their business, all these things, it's because they have such a problem that they're willing to give you money in advance to, let you build a product. A good example of it is Tesla, for example. It's not a startup, but you think of Tesla, right? Tesla doesn't even sell the car. They take a small down payment for years and years and years. So for the Cybertruck, they had like a down payment for 2 years, I think. 2 years, they just down payment. These are people who believe in Elon and they just give money, right? And basically what Elon got was like a interest-free loan for 2 years. But Elon didn't just get interest-free loan for 2 years. What he also got was the market validation that these many people want a Cybertruck. Even though it's the ugliest looking truck in the world, people want this thing. That is good enough market validation. So now he can go in to his shareholders and say, look, we need to allocate this much of amount to the Cybertruck so that we can build it. The same kind of concept applies for a startup. If thousands and thousands and thousands of people believe in what you're building and give you money, you're not just getting money, you're also getting the market validation for it. So step one, just to rephrase it, level one financing is that you get it from yourself. Level two is friends and family. Level three is probably angels or crowdfunding, or you go to accelerators and incubators.
Interesting. The reason why I ask you this question is because we usually hear that majority of the businesses don't need any hefty capital upfront, right? And can start with zero or low capital. But certain businesses do need initial capital, like they might need to set up a manufacturing plant, or they might need some types of equipment or machinery, which are quite expensive, and not everyone's startups are tech startups. They can be different, like brick and mortar restaurants requiring initial lease space and kitchen equipment, or certain service-based businesses needing licenses and software subscriptions. So that's why I asked you.
Not just that, even if you're not a tech startup, let's say you're starting up a restaurant, right? Okay, let's take two examples, right? You take a restaurant and you take a tech startup, like a marketing agency kind of a company. Okay, in theory, you don't need a lot of money to start, right? The problem is, no matter what company you are, basic things you will require, right? You will require an accounting software. You will require something to like a CRM or a CRM tool, right? You will require an email subscription, right? You can't start anything with absolute zero, right? You have to kind of analysis of how much capital do you want upfront? Can I start with $10 in my pocket, or do I really, really, really need a lot of money? And that depends from business to business. There is no scenario in which you can start anything with $0. You will see, if you go on your TikToks and Instagrams and things, you will see a lot of these people come up on your feed saying you can do this side hustle and make the $100,000, make this much amount of money. The problem with all those things, by the time you get to those information, by the time you get to know that something like this exists, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people have already signed up for that, are still already doing that. So by the time you enter into the market, it is already a saturated market. So the chances of you making $100,000 figure, like the TikTok guy promises you, is very marginal. Right? There is 1 in 1,000% chance, 1 in 1,000 chance, or 1 in 2,000 chance that you actually make that much amount of money. You might be successful, but there is a very, very, very marginal amount of chances that you would make that amount in your business. So you always want to be, prudent and cautious about people who say that you can start everything with $0. You can start this for the cheapest way. This is the free way to make thousands and thousands of dollars. Anytime somebody says that, you want to be very careful about it. You want to do your market analysis. Just because a bunch of people push it, just because a bunch of people tell you it's the right thing, is never the right thing to do. So that is also one more thing. When we get into more complex things, right, like a restaurant or a manufacturing plant and everything, this is when you need a lot of capital upfront. You don't want to listen to people. You want to listen to data. You want to go out there, connect either primary or secondary research. You want to do the research yourself. You don't want to rely on like a report by HSBC or report by the ICICI or one of these banks. You don't want to rely on reports. You want to rely on data, like raw data that you want to put it out and say that if the market is shifting like this, how much money can I make? What is my TAM?
TAM, or total addressable market, is the total money you could make yearly if everyone who could buy your product did so. It's like the maximum amount of sales a business could make if it reaches everyone who wants its product or service. It's like imagining that everyone who could use your product does. This gives you an idea of the full potential of your market. For example, if you are selling a new kind of bicycle, your TAM would be all the people in the world who might want to buy a bicycle. But remember, it's just a theoretical maximum. In reality, not everyone will buy your bicycle because of factors like competition, price, and individual preferences. So, while TAM is a useful concept, it's also important to be realistic about your actual market potential. If you find this podcast interesting, hit that subscribe button so you never miss any Bizdom Bites wisdom. And check out Abubakr's podcast show on YouTube. It's The Dollar Diaries.
You want to find out how much is your total market worth. You want to find out how much is your serviceable market worth. How much of the serviceable market that you can realistically obtain. You want to do this data analysis yourself. You don't want to outsource it to somebody's third-party reports. You don't want to outsource it to somebody. You don't want to outsource it to some news report. Every morning, if you open up Financial Times, right? Every morning you will see a report that's this market is worth this much. This market is worth this much. This market is worth this much. In reality, that is like if you have a $2 billion market for restaurants, that doesn't mean you should enter into restaurants. You want to look into your context. If you are living in, let's say, in the middle of nowhere, in somewhere in Uttar Pradesh, right? You're living in Uttar Pradesh, in the middle of nowhere in a village. Just because a restaurant is a $2 billion market doesn't mean you open a Michelin-star restaurant in the middle of nowhere in a village in Uttar Pradesh, right? So you want to take context to data. You want to add your own context. You want to analyze your data and see whether this is a worth endeavor or not. Is this worth my time? Is this my capital? And you want to do that analysis yourself.
Interesting. I got it. So, just now you talked about some funding options, right? What are the different funding options are there? You talked about crowdfunding and bootstrapping. Now, once again, can you just tell me all the different options, what we can do?
Alex, so let's split it up, right? The first thing you want to do is,
I'll tell you. Firstly, you need to make sure that you have the money. Step 2, you go to your parents, family, uncles, aunts, or cousins. Step 3, you go to your friends. Step 4, you look for crowdfunding. Step 5, you can look for some accelerators and incubators. Step 6, go look for some angel investors. If you find this podcast interesting, hit that subscribe button so you never miss any Bizdom Bites wisdom. And check out Abubakr's podcast show on YouTube. It's The Dollar Diaries.
you shouldn't think about venture capital or private equity or any of these things until you're a well-off company. You are like past a certain stage. You go to venture capitals and private equities. You go to venture capitals when you're at least in Series A. You go to private equity when you're looking to exit the company. A lot of people don't understand this. They think like, oh, I'll go, this is a private equity, this is a VC. You should never, ever, ever, ever look for a VC, right? If you're starting a business, never look for a VC. You should, in fact, if you ask me, you should never look at an angel investor until it's absolute dire, right? To test your concepts, you never, ever, ever go to an investor.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? So these are your options for funding.
Okay, what about government schemes and initiatives and grants which are provided by government of like in my country, India? What do you think about it? Should we take as an initial point?
Yes, you should always make use of it if it is available. And look, especially in countries like India, right? There is a lot of competition. You won't easily get the grants, right? And that is a good thing, right? If there is a government backing for your project, that is a very good thing. It's going to make your entire funding process for the rest of the company's history very, very, very easy, right? So if there is a government funding option available, government grants and schemes, typically these are the non-commitment schemes, right? Typically the government doesn't ask for equity in the company. The government doesn't ask for this thing. It's typically like I'll give you money and no questions asked kind of a deal in most cases, right? So if it is that kind of thing, just take the money. Never, never, never think twice about it. If apply for this, if you get it, well and good, all good. Take the money, use it, build something amazing.
Okay, let's say if I want to start a factory and I do need some sort of equipments or like manufacturing like equipments and other stuff. So should I opt for loans or micro loans, or should I reach out to any manufacturing like businessmen and ask to join us in our like be a partner in our company? What would be the better option?
Look, if you're building something that requires extensive amount of money, right, like a manufacturing plant, for example, which requires a lot of machinery. If you don't have the money, you want to be 100% sure that this is worth something you're doing. Okay, you have to be 100% sure before you reach out to anybody. You have to be 110% sure whether this is worth it. Okay, when you're 110% sure it's worth it, you look for financing options. All right. The easiest method is you look for existing players in the market and see if you can sort of lease or rent their facility. The often most underlooked financing option is renting, right? You think about renting and leasing, you don't really think about it as like, oh, this is a financing option. In reality, leasing and renting is the easiest and the most important financing option. If you can't lease and rent, then you look at for like a loans. All right. And when you're taking a loan, you want to be 120% sure that this is worth it. Because not only you're taking money from the banks, no bank is going to give you a loan without an interest. Right? And you want to, it is worth paying that interest, right? You're taking a risk and you're paying a premium for that money. Is it really worth it? And with a lot of cultures and a lot of religions, interest is forbidden in a lot of religions and a lot of cultures. So in that case, also want to take an ethical approach to it. Is it really right for me to pay interest? Is it like, am I personally okay with paying interest? Is something you want to be okay with? Now, if you take my case, I don't want to pay interest, right? And that is a personal thing to me. So I would never think of going to a bank and taking a loan. But if you are okay with paying interest, and if you are okay with paying a premium for it, and you think it is 110% guarantee that it will succeed, then yeah, go on and take a loan. But the problem with loan versus other type of financing, like equity-based financing, is that when your business runs into a loss, the shareholders also run into a loss. So what happens is, and the investor have a shared goal of making sure that this business doesn't fail, right? Which is with any sort of loans. For a bank, it doesn't matter where you fail. It doesn't matter whether you succeed. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what the economy is like. It doesn't matter that your suppliers have increased the price and you're making a loss. It doesn't matter your customers are not returning. It doesn't matter. And nothing matters to them as long as they're getting their payments on time. Right? And very, 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 very dangerous place to be in. Right? Because you can predict, you can put it on an Excel sheet and predict that month 1, I'm going to make this much money. Month 2, I can make this much money. Month 3, I can make this much money. Month 4, I can make this much money. What happens is day after tomorrow, let's say you are in like manufacturing business, right? Day after tomorrow, there is a small conflict in the Middle East, oil prices rise up. Your complete, all your calculations and analysis and months of Excel preparations gone to waste because oil prices have increased and your suppliers increased. What can they do? Nothing. It's not in your hand, right? All these 3-year predictions, 4-year predictions, nothing matters because the world's not at your fingertips. You don't control the world. So in this case, if you're taking an interest, you're taking a massive risk. So you want to be 110% sure. You want to make sure your suppliers won't screw you. You want to make sure your customers will come back to you. You want to make sure your customers will pay the premium that you're putting on the product or the service, right? So you want to be 120% sure before you take a bank loan or any sort of microfinancing options. A biggest pitfall, right? And people don't realize it. There are a lot of buy now, pay later sort of options in India, right? You will buy like something like for 400 rupees and you will pay 100 rupees over the next 4 months. It seems very tempting. But if you see the data, right, there are so many people who are committing suicide and everything because what happens is all these companies are like shaming these people who are not paying it. It's kind of like a thing you become ashamed of that you didn't pay your dues on time and everything. And people are like, really committing suicide over this. So these are not easy things. Money is a very sensitive topic. So you should never be like, yeah, you know what, I will buy this, I will invest, put 400 rupees on my accounting software, I will pay 100 rupees for the next 4 months. You will never know what happens in the 3rd month. You might lose your job, you might have a sudden emergency. You will never know. The life's not in your control, right? So you want to be a million times sure before you opt for these predatory. I call them very predatory in nature, right? They're out to get you. Right, so, sort of financing, avoid that as much as possible. You don't want to be in a place where tomorrow morning something happens to you, you're completely ruined. Right, that is one place you want to be out. No business, no idea is worth your health. It's not worth your mental health, physical health, and it's not worth losing your dignity over. So, I personally am very against bank loans and all these alternate financing methods. But if you're 1,000% sure about your business idea, you know for a fact nothing is going to happen and you're ready to take that risk, you can apply for it.
So just now you talked about venture capitalists, right? Venture capital and its ecosystem. So Abubakar, with an understanding of these initial options, let's talk about it. When might VC funding be a good fit for a startup, and what are some key things to know about this path?
The most important thing is, and a lot of people don't understand it, VC funding is never good for a startup. It's never, ever, ever good for a startup. You want to get VC funding when you want to scale. So, or in our context, we call them scale-ups, right? These are businesses with clear clients, with huge, either if it's a B2B business, you have like really huge clients, or if it's a B2C customers, you have constant revenue, good, strong revenues, okay, strong profitability. Like that is when you want to look into VC funding. You never look for VC funding for a startup. You look for VC funding for a scale-up.
Yeah, we got it. So are there any types of investments rounds in the VC ecosystem? Like, as you said that And VCs will never invest in that initial startups, like initial rounds.
Mostly, right? So what we look at is like a couple of things. We look at something called a pre-seed round, like a typical startup, right? The pre-seed round is where you want to look for your friends and family money. All right. Then there is the seed stage. The seed stage is where you look for like a crowdfunding, or like if you're taking a loan, or you look at like a accelerator, incubator, all these sort of things. After seed is where you typically have seed rounds, right? Seed rounds is where you want to look for seed A. You typically, some people go into VC, but I would strongly advise against it, right? Like seed is where you look at like angel investors, and then Series B, Series E is all where you go into VC financing. These criterias, right? Like from a pre-seed to seed to Series A, Series B, Series C, these all depends from companies to companies. There is no set standard, right? If you are a restaurant, you don't even have series, right? You just have some seed, and then you have money to scale up. That's it, right? It's not that complex in terms of, at least in terms of financing. But when you're looking at a tech startup, it's a little different. You have different rounds and everything. Now, even in tech startups, you have like a B2B business and a B2C business. The distance between a seed round and a Series A round varies by a large degree. Okay, so you will never really know, and there is no set criteria for it. A good criteria, at least in my mind, is where what we call in economics is an equilibrium stage, or like a stagnant stage. What that means is like you built a product, you're getting 1,000 customers. Let's say, for an example, you're getting 1,000 customers in a month. Okay, can't cross 1,000. You can't get the 1,001st customer. Okay, to get the 1,001st customer, you need to invest money to build, to improve the quality or the capacity of that business, right? To get the 1,001st customer. That is what the difference between where you need to raise the next round, right? So if you're getting 1,000 and 1,000 and 1,000 for 1 year, it's fine. For 2 years, it's fine. You don't want to get just 1,000 customers for 3 years. You want to grow, right? So the money you need to grow is when you look at VCs. So from business to business, for an e-commerce business, this might be 100,000 customers, 200,000 customers. For a B2B business, it might be 5 clients, 10 clients, 20 clients, 100 clients. Again, depends from businesses to businesses. There's no one size fits all.
Okay, you talked about series, right? Series A and all that. How many seed rounds are there in total?
Typically, the concept is like, what do you think about this? Think about it like a plant, right? Your seed is like you are buying a seed from a guy, like from the store, right? Your seed is basically you're planting that in the soil. All right. So you can only seed once, logically speaking. All right. Then comes your series rounds. So series rounds can be almost indefinite. Typically, companies go to at least Series A, Series B, Series A, and Series B. But there are companies like there is this company in India, like a grocery delivering application. I can't quite remember their name.
Is that Zepto or Blink?
Yes, Zepto. Right? So Zepto, what? They are in Series E or Series F. So these again depend from businesses to businesses. There is unlimited amount of series. The idea is that when you start a business, you typically have something called a time frame. You want to exit the business within 5 to 7 years. Or every investor wants to exit the business in 5 to 7 years. All right? So the idea is that you exit the business in 5 to 7 years. So what does an exit mean? Basically, you go and list your company in Bombay Stock Exchange. Right? That is an exit. Or you sell your company to somebody, like your closest competitor, or an acquisition. That's an exit. Or in large cases, in very developed economies like the US, what happens is there are firms called private equity firms. they buy the businesses and they do whatever they want. That is an exit, right? So within 5 to 7 years of you starting it, you need to exit. You have to exit. Your investors will want to exit. So that is where, so companies, Tepto, if they started in what, 2020? This is 2024. They have like next 2 to 3 years, you'll see them either listed in Bombay Stock Exchange or they would have sold to a competitor.
Okay. So,
Right? So that is what the tagline typically is.
so let's say I'm in a VC firm, okay? I have a startup and I got some sort of like investments, not even investment, revenue. I have generated some sort of revenue and I'm in a good stage. And I'm in the venture capital right now. And I want to know, what do the investors usually look for in a founder?
Okay, so let's take it from 2 steps, okay? The first step, let's say you're a startup, like a new startup, and you are not looking for a VC, you're looking for an investor in general, all right? At a very early stage, what we look at is typically who the founders are, right? If the founders are capable, are the founders from the good backgrounds? Do they have the necessary skills? Are there any conflicts between the founders? Are there any conflicts of interest between the founders? These are all things that we typically do something called due diligence to find out. The next thing you immediately look at is the potential of the business. What is the available market? How much market can you obtain and how did you obtain that data? Right? What is the potential of the business is very important. And what is the business itself? Like, is it logistically correct? Or is there like something weird going on? Is there like a scheme going on? These are all things that we typically look for at the very, 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 very early stage business. Once business has grown, we do the same exact thing, but we also look at revenues. We also look at profitability. All right. A lot of the companies raise money. Here's the reason why companies raise money, because they're losing money. They're not making enough profit. They're making barely any profit or zero profit. All right. They're making losses year on year. That's why they need money to cover it up. Correct? So when we do that, like when we look at like a more mature company, a scale up, for example, we look at what is their revenue and how much money are they burning per year, right? How much money are they burning? Is there any place where they're burning that is not necessary? Or are they doing some sort of a financial fraud with it? Sometimes, they do all these loopholes with shell companies and everything to pay themselves more money from investors, which is something investors typically like to avoid for obvious reasons. So we look at the revenues and what are the expenses, and does the expenses make sense in a business context? Let's say you are a restaurant, or not even a restaurant. Let's say you're Zepto. Zepto is a good example because that's on the top of my head. Let's say you're Zepto, but every year every month you're seeing that there is a 500 crore expense on restaurants. And you have to think, do you, one, how does this make sense for the business? And second, you'll think like, even if you're going for business meetings and everything, do you really need 500 crore for that? Right? So you do all the analysis and see whether this company is for real, is what they're doing legit, and is their concern correct, like for raising money? Is their thesis correct for raising money? Are they raising money for the right reason or the wrong reason, or are they trying to defraud us? These are typically things that we have to look at. And especially for tech companies, what we have to look at is the logistics of the tech. Because there are a lot of people who don't know anything about technology, and they come and say like, oh, we are doing AI this and blockchain that and crypto this and facial recognition that and a metaverse this. They'll throw all the keywords in. When they throw all the keywords in, if you're not familiar with these technologies and the applications of these technologies and the limitations of the tech and how this can be abused, how this can be misused, if you don't know all of these things, you're completely screwed as an investor. So we want to try and avoid. So we do something called technical due diligence to make sure that what you're pitching is first possible, what they're pitching is the right thing to do. Just because a good example is that, let's again take Zepto. That Zepto really need AI. Okay, that Zepto really need to incorporate blockchain. That Zepto really need to incorporate the metaverse. That Zepto really need to incorporate cryptocurrency, right? So we do all these things. How does, if you incorporate this, what is the benefit of it? What is the disadvantage of it? If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. As simple as that.
Here in India, we have a TV show called Shark Tank, which is very popular. And sometimes the investors say that they don't like the product which a founder is selling, but they still invest just because they like the founder or his presentation or pitch. Do we have something like that in reality in VC firm? Like believing the founder's mindset and his vision regardless of what he's selling?
So look, one is that there are few investors like that, obviously, right? There are everywhere. Like investors are, it depends on people. There are also people at the end of the day. Sometimes they find certain things that appeal to them and they invest in it, but sometimes it fails, sometimes it succeeds. You have to understand that the real life is not like Shark Tank. All right, real life is not like Shark Tank, and even Shark Tank is not real life. Like in reality, when the founders are pitching and everything, it's a much longer conversation. What they show you in Shark Tank is like 10-15 minutes of it, but in reality, it's significantly longer. Like there is a lot more discussion going on. There's a lot more planning going on. There's a lot more thinking going on, right? But what they do for TV, they cut it and make it dramatic, add music, and make it all exciting, because you have to understand Shark Tank is not about, Shark Tank is not for business, right? Shark Tank is not for entrepreneurs. Shark Tank is not for people who are fine for like coming up with business ideas. Shark Tank is for really, really, really stupid and dumb television audience, right? People who will like eat whatever. These are the people who will see like a TV serial right after Shark Tank and enjoy both of them equally. Everything's serialized, right? Like it's serialized in nature. If you really, I'll tell you what, right? In reality, business pitches are boring as hell, right? I've been to business pitches like 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours business pitches like okay, think about this, right? There was this one event where it was an accelerator event. Okay, we were there and we were looking at it, and I was there for 2.5 hours. Okay, 2.5 hours. Every team gets 10 minutes to present their business idea, and it just keeps on going. 10 minutes includes 7 minutes of presentation, 3 minutes of question from the judges. All right. This went on for 2.5 hours. By the end of the first hour, I swear to God, I wanted to put a bullet in my head. Like, that's how boring it. Okay. Now think about these guys, right? Like the sharks in the Shark Tank. These guys are listening to all these things. You think people back in your home or at home watching television can stand that for 2.5 hours? Absolutely not. Right? So what TV producers do is they cut it out, add the dramatic music, dun 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 dun, all this fancy music just to dramatize it so that it can, the objective of Shark Tank is not to invest in startups. The objective of Shark Tank is to entertain a large amount of audience, because that makes them more money than the investments.
Maybe just to promote entrepreneurship, they do.
Not even promote entrepreneurship. So Shark Tank originated in where? US, right? Yeah. So you will see people like Mark Cuban and all these people. Mark Cuban, if Mark Cuban wasn't on Shark Tank, nobody would have known him. He would just be another billionaire. Right? He would just be one of those billionaires that you randomly come across on like a Wikipedia search or when they do something. Or maybe you would know Mark Cuban a little bit if you follow NBA because he owned a basketball team. Right? So, but apart from that, you wouldn't have heard of Mark Cuban. But you know Mark Cuban as soon as I say Mark Cuban because he was on Shark Tank. That's significantly more for his value, like his personal branding. That's more for his personal branding than for entrepreneurship. Mark Cuban's not there to invest and make money because Mark Cuban already has a lot of money. What Mark Cuban wants is publicity. What Mark Cuban wants is something called earned media. Right? Mark Cuban doesn't want to pay marketing expenses to bring his name out to the world. Mark Cuban wants to show up to these shows, make a few investments here and there, most of which will fail. He will make a few, but you now know who Mark Cuban is, right? So in Shark Tank, nobody's in it to help the entrepreneurs. Nobody's in it to help increase entrepreneurship. Nobody's here to make sure that businesses succeed. The judges are there. The sharks are there to improve their personal branding. The network is there to provide a new product to entertain mass audiences. That's it. Right? So it's a very flawed and, it's a terrible system, but yeah, it is what it is. It's just entertainment. These networks make more money on that than the investment. People like Mark Cuban make significantly more money with his name than on like a few $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $1 million here and there. Right? For Mark Cuban, $1 million is like nothing. Like pennies. Right? It doesn't matter to him. For him, the earned media is worth significantly more than the amount he invests.
Okay, let's forget about all these Shark Tank and let's get back to VC. Let's say we got the involvement of VC in our business. What will be the advantages and challenges in our business, including expectation?
Can you repeat the question?
Like, what are the advantages of the VC involvement in our business, and what are the challenges businesses face?
Okay, so when it comes to VCs, the only advantage you have is you get money. Okay, every step of the way, it's a disadvantage. All right, typically what happens is the VCs don't really understand the business. They are typically unaligned with the business. Because they are in it for a very short term, right? VCs put money, they want more money in return. They don't care what happens, they just want more money in return, right? And sometimes this can be such a pain. I've personally been in meetings where, like, I go and say, like, I report to my boss saying that they are doing this, basically snitch on them, right? And that is not like, if you are a founder, that is somebody you don't want around you as much as possible. Right? For me, when I was doing a job, I had the obligation to tell my boss what was happening. Right? But feel good about it? Not really, because I was always like sniffing my nose around, finding ways to cut costs, finding ways to see if this is going to work or not. Just finding wrong things. My entire job was just finding what is wrong. And that's not a good thing to have around you. So anytime an institutional investor like an angel or a VC is involved, it's almost always bad unless you have such a strong product and such a strong vision and such a strong personality that you can avoid and deter from it. Unless you have all those things, this is going to be such a pain. You're looking at money, but what's more important than money while running a business is peace of mind. And when you have a VC around, there is... And I'm sorry for swearing.
Okay. So do you think VC control the businesses just because they invest tiny percentage of like money?
Most of the time, VCs don't give you equity for money for like 5% or 10%. They would want a significant chunk. Correct? So if you are two founders, you might start the company with 50-50. Okay? This VC will come and ask you for 35. Let's take a simpler number. Okay, let's say he's asking for 40%. VC is asking for 40%. That means you have 60 left. So you get 30, the other person get 30. So in reality, what is happening is you started the business, you both started the business, and what happens is that VC has more equity in the business.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So whenever you're making a decision, a significant financial decision, what happens is that you and your co-founder have to agree every time. Otherwise, if one of you is with the VC wins every decision. Right? So it's not like it's a control and like a puppet kind of a analogy. It's a little more nuanced than that. But regardless, it becomes like, what do you say? It is an unnecessary headache, right? Yes, the money is important, but you have to understand, just because the money is nice doesn't justify the complications that it comes with.
Okay. Now let's talk about our final segment, which is building a winning pitch deck and the product market fit. So if I decided to raise an investment from a VC firm, what are some key elements for crafting a compelling pitch deck and showcasing our potential?
Um, so you want to look at something called everybody can Google this, right? You can Google for Sequoia Capital's pitch deck. That is like the gold standard for pitch decks. Like every single information is covered. Typically, what you want to do is that you want to show, step one is you want to show what problem are you solving. All right.
Cool.
Why this problem is worth solving? Like step one is problem, right? Why this problem is worth solving? How big is this problem? Who all has this problem? Why this problem is important to you? All these things should be there in like that single slide. Every, different people have different ways of ordering it and everything, but that is a very important piece of information. The second one is the solution. How are you solving that problem? Why is your solution the best way to solve that problem? Are there solutions outside of this? How are people solving this problem right now? Right? You want this to be so compelling that it's as if like this problem is so unsolved and this problem is like, the biggest problem for people. Right? So your problem and solution is like very, very, very key. The next thing you want to do is show what is the potential of the business. The potential of the business is a very tricky part. You want to show how much is the total market available for your industry/business. You want to show what is the serviceable market and how much of the serviceable market, what percentage of serviceable market can you realistically obtain within a certain time span, like whether in 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. What is a realistic percentage that you can obtain? Next, you want to show if you are obtaining, let's say, 5% in 5 years, who owns the remaining 95% of the market, which is the competition? Who are your competitors? Right? Who owns the remaining 95% of the market? And how are you planning to capture that from your this thing, which is called the go-to-market strategy? If these people already exist in your market, how are you planning to get 5% of that market in 5 years? Right? That is very important. What is your go-to-market strategy? The next important thing is your financials, right? If you are a brand new startup, what is your projections? If you're a running startup, what is your current rate and what is your projections? And if you're a scale up, what is the potential if I give you more money? All right. And that section should also kind of involve how much money you require, how much money you require, what is the term, right? Like, is it like how many percentage, all these terms you want to look at, and what are you going to use that money for, right? How much percent of it is towards tech development? How much of it is going to your marketing? How much of it is going towards hiring people, right? These are all very important breakdowns. But more than all of this, a very essential part that a lot of people forget is the team, right? Why do you have the right people? Why are you the right person to build this? And why do you have the right set of people around you to build this? It is a lot of people go in thinking that I am good enough and I am alone enough. That is a very bad thing. You should never have just one picture on your pitch deck. You should never be the only person building this, because one person's never, ever good enough to build everything on his own or on her own, right? So you always want to have at least two co-founders.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At least two people minimum, right? With varied skill set, right? So that team makes a lot of difference. You want to compel investors to say, like, I am the right person and I have the right team to build this. My team is the strongest set of people to build this. My team have such an involvement with this problem. We all face this problem regularly. So we all got together to fix this. Something like that. It has to be a little bit compelling. So that team slide is one of the most important slides, in my opinion.
Team slides.
Yeah. And so that pretty much covers your basics.
Okay. What if there are some differing opinions between two founders? Like they have the same goal, but their approaches are different. So how do we solve this kind of problem?
You become an adult and talk it out. It's as simple as that. There is no I'll do this method, that method. There's no method. You just have to sit and talk to the other person. It's as simple as that,
What if
right?
you
There is there are so many.
yeah, continue.
Yeah.
What if your
No, go ahead.
what if your co-founder is stubborn?
If your co-founder is stubborn, you have to reevaluate whether that is the right person to do business with. It's not easy. It's a very harsh thing. It's a very, very, very harsh thing. But it's not easy. But you have to think of your co-founder like there is this analogy, right? Your co-founder is kind of like the person you're married to, right? You want to make sure that person's the right person. You don't want to break. You don't want to mess things up. At the same time, you also want to have such a good functioning relationship. Any relationship, whether it's your marriage, your friends, or even a co-founder relation, all relations will have conflicts, right? It's having conflicts is not a problem. It's how you deal with conflicts is where it is what it makes or breaks something, right? Whether it's your friendship, your marriage, or even your company, what makes or breaks all of these things is how you deal with the conflicts. If you're not adult enough, if both of you are not adult enough to make compromises, if you're not adult enough to take other perspectives, then you both have to kind of evaluate whether this is a working and functional relationship. And if it's not, then is it really worth your time? Is it really worth going in every morning to see that person's face you completely disagree with? Is it really worth building something with this person? Is it possible to build something with this person? Right? A lot of things come into question if you can't deal things like an adult.
Okay. How do we divide the equity between the co-founders? Let's say we have 3 to 4 co-founders. Should we divide it equally or based on how hard they work or how much they are contributing? There should be
typically, right, there is some differing opinions on this. Some will say equal, but I don't believe in equal. If there is a person contributing more in terms of either time or money or both, they should get more, right? If somebody has sometimes what happens is, like, let's say there are 2 business graduates, like there are 2 business people who have like the most complicated tech product they have in mind. Okay, so they get another tech co-founder who is good at tech. Sometimes you have to give that person more equity just to keep that person around for a cheaper rate. Right? So these are all discussions. And the biggest problem with co-founders is that when there are more than 2, is what happens is, like, they don't like to talk to each other. They don't like to negotiate with each other. And what happens is that, they just agree on equals. And that is, like, when we look at it from a VC point of view, we look at it as a negative sign, a red flag. If the founders have equal equity in a company, that is a red flag, because these co-founders don't know how to negotiate with each other or negotiate in general. They are just avoiding a problem. They're just avoiding a conversation. So that is a red flag for us. But in reality, in a company, you have to negotiate. If you are putting more time, if you are putting in more resources, if you are more skillful and more important for the business to succeed, you have to negotiate a higher equity.
So negotiation.
And that is not. Yes, and usually that is not an easy conversation to have with your co-founders. It is a very difficult conversation. I've had that conversation multiple times, and it's a very, like, a nightmare to have that conversation. So, but you have to have it. It's just part of the game.
They might hold grudges, maybe, if they don't get all.
They might, but it's okay.
You talked about go-to-market strategy, right? So how can startups validate their product ideas and ensure they are solving a real problem for their target audience? Is my question.
Easiest cheapest way to do it is talk to your potential customers. Just go and talk to them. And don't ask them questions. Right? Don't ask them, do you do this, do you do this, do you do this? No, just have a normal conversation. Buy them a cup of coffee and ask them questions. Talk to them. Know what they're about, what this thing is, what they do. Know every single detail about your customers. I remember like when we were first thinking about starting a business, we just went to a coffee shop and we spoke to around 350 people, if I'm not wrong. 350 people just to check if this is a problem they have. And what we found out is like roughly 120 of them didn't have that problem. Okay? But the remaining did. So that could be a potential problem to solve. So then what we started doing was like we built this new product to see if that happens. We put out like a few ad campaigns on like social media to see how many people are clicked on and everything. Those didn't work out very well. So then we knew that this is maybe not a big enough problem or we are going about it wrong. So we had to pivot. This finding whether this is a good problem to solve will not be like a 1 month or a 2 month exercise. This could be a longer process depending on what you're trying to solve. So don't get deterred, but always talk to your potential customers. You have to talk to your customers. You can't just build newsletters and make lists and like wait for your customers to flow in. You have to go directly talk to your customers. That is the easiest, cheapest, and the smartest way to do it.
Then what are some key metrics for measuring our product market fit, and how can entrepreneurs track progress and make adjustments as needed?
The biggest metric to figure out product market fit is revenue. How much sales are you doing? Right? If you're not making any sales, there is sadly no product market fit. As simple as that. Right? And if you're seeing that you have a certain target and you're not attaining that target, it means that you have a bad product market fit. As simple as that. So you look at ways to pivot. Do I offer a different service? Do I offer a product? Do I offer an add-on? You kind of have to figure it out, right, around that. But if you're not meeting your targets, if you're not meeting a realistic target, you don't like set yourself up for failure, but you set realistic targets. And if you don't attain your targets, you go back and see why you didn't attain your target. Did your campaign fail? Did people not like your product? What is the reason? Are they reviewers? Are they negative testing? The first few months, you can maybe even call your customers and ask, how do you feel about those, what it is, and how often do you use it, etc., etc., etc. Right? So that is, but you have to first, initial payment go through is not the product market fit, but to figure out what is the metric for product market fit. What is my target to see whether I succeeded or failed? And that is going to take a couple of months. Once you figure out what is a good target fit, that is when you figure out after that is which time you figure out like whether you have a good product market fit. And a good chance is there that you might not have a product market fit. But it is what it is, right? Yes, well, here is what it is. You can't do anything about it.
Okay, one last question, then we can wind up.
Sure, go ahead.
What are some practical tips for iterating on products and improving the user experience based on the market feedback we get?
All right. So step one is you want to have like whatever tech, I'm going to assume tech product, right? Whatever tech product you have, you want to install enough ways to measure your customers' interactions. Right? Easy, no-brainer problem. Step two is you want to directly talk to your customers. This is not a review section. This is not like to Google reviews or one of these things. You want to call them up and ask them, is everything okay? Okay, does it work for me? What do you feel about it? And when you're starting out, you have that option. When you're big like Facebook or Google, you don't have that option. Right? But when you are a very small company, you have that option. You make use of it. Step three is making sure that you stick to conventions, especially with mobile apps and websites and all these things, right? Web applications. You have to see that there are conventions, right? There is like a certain, if you're doing UI, there's the material UI library. There comes standards and conventions. You follow the standards and conventions, the likely chance is that the user experience is very good because people are used to certain things. People are used to swiping right to move right. People are used to swiping left to move left. Right? So you stick to conventions, you're most likely offering a good customer feedback. The last thing is like make sure you always sandbox your tests, right? Just because let's say you have a version 1 of an application, you want to test version 2. You don't want to, randomly like update everybody's application to version 2. We want to take a few people and you want to test the version 2 with them in like in a separate environment. Like you want to like either in a focus group or you're just sending updates. So if you see Facebook, right, they test updates in a very nice fashion. Some people will, before they stopped, there is a feature on Instagram where it doesn't show number of likes. Like at first they didn't roll out to everybody. They rolled out to selective users and selective places, selective regions. And they tested it, then they got the feedback from it, then they rolled out to everybody. Correct?
Correct.
So you want to do some sort of a test like that. If you can't afford to do that, which is fair enough. If you can't afford to do that, ask like 5 of your most loyal customers to test out and update and see how they feel about it. Right? This is what you can do about it.
Interesting. So we have covered a lot in this episode. Abubakar, you are an absolute startup guru. Thank you so much for spilling the tea on everything from financing, navigating the VC jungle, and crafting pitch decks that sing to finding product market fit. Thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation packed with valuable insights for the aspiring tech entrepreneur like me.
All right, no worries. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here and all the best for the podcast. Hopefully it works out. Has been well. Looking forward to the episode as well.
Thank you so much.